Good evening, everyone. Welcome to day 12 of our Salesforce training. Tonight, we're going to continue our training on data and analytics management, part 2. So yesterday, we learned a lot about how to work with data and how to bring data into Salesforce, how to update data, how to get data out of Salesforce. Today, we are going to be focusing more on reports and dashboard. But before we carry on with reports and dashboard, we're going to touch base on data validation tools and data export services, which are available in Salesforce. Okay, everything is important, but we need to at least know how to get data out of Salesforce. And we also need to know what Salesforce meant by data validation tools. So without wasting much time, let's go right into the trailhead to get into our hands-on org. And I will start explaining a few things. So I click on launch and I go into the backend to explain a few things that we did not complete yesterday. So yesterday, I told you about data import wizard that helps you to get data in and out of Salesforce. No, actually, it helps you to get data into the Salesforce. Data imports does not help you get data out. You use reports to export data out. Remember, we use reports, we generate a report, and we export the data out based on whatever we need, okay? But data import only get data into the Salesforce, just to correct that. So now, data validation, what do we mean by that? When you're working with objects, you always want to make sure that the data that comes into the objects is validated, okay? By validation, I mean, you want to ensure that if you are entering, let's say, in the account object, you want to enter some data into the account object, you want to make sure that maybe the client number is a number, not a text. You want to make sure maybe the rating is always auth code 1, nothing else. Those are data validation tools that Salesforce has put in place to ensure clean data are entered within the Salesforce org. However, when it comes to Salesforce, there are two concepts. The first concept of validation is what they call the system validation. This is done by Salesforce. So what's system validation? System validation is essentially what Salesforce has put in place to ensure that the data that is coming in is validated. For instance, when you create a new field, you select whatever data type you want, and you click on Next. The required field is a form of system validation, okay? Required field is a form of system validation, meaning that Salesforce has this inbuilt tool to ensure that there is always data in this field. Unique field is also a form of system validation, meaning that whenever you enter data into the system, you would not have a duplicate client name. Whenever you enter opportunities, you will not have a duplicate, opportunity name, maybe. Understand? So that's system validation. In addition to that, you also have date fields. So when you say date fields, you have what they call the date time and date. So when you're entering data in the front end and it's a date field, you don't have to enter a text in a date field. That's what Salesforce does, okay? Salesforce validates all these fields and asks you to enter the right data. That's system validation. The other type of validation, which some of you must have seen during your project, is what they call custom validation rules. So custom validation are the validation rules you put in place based on business requirements. In as much as most system validation are also driven by business requirement, But custom validation is mostly driven by logic. For instance, the start date should be less than the end date. That's business logic. You cannot do that using fields and relationship. The only thing you can do with fields and relationship is you can make it required. Okay, you can make it compulsory, but you cannot do that logic unless you're using a formula. Okay, so now validation rules are put in place to ensure that you can enter the right data in the right fields. So let's kind of like go to our projects whereby I said the start date must not be greater than the end date. This simply means if the start date is greater than the end date, then ensure that user cannot save that record. What does that mean? It says if this formula expression is true, then show this error message. The start date cannot be greater than the end date. Okay, this is the error message you're going to display, and this is a condition that is being checked. Obviously, you just don't type in start date. You have to insert the fields and look for the field which you want to compare. So there are more to validation rules, but this is the simplest of all validation rules. Again, everything is driven by the business requirements, okay? And remember, you put the error message here if you want to relate the error to the user so they know what the challenge is, okay? So now that we know that, there is also what they call order of execution, or I would say order of processing. What do I mean by that? If you have validation rules in place, you have assignment rules in place, you have workflow rules in place, you have duplicate rules, look at, if you go to your Salesforce, we have so many rules. We have so many rules in place: escalation rules, assignment rules, auto response rules, workflow rules, matching rules, duplicate rules. And I've explained all this stuff to you. Now, when you're entering data into the system, which one gets checked first? For instance, if you're entering data whereby you're checking the field to be hot, when it is hot, it's going to send an email. Is Salesforce going to send the email before submitting the data, or Salesforce will submit the data, then check the email, then send auto response through? Which one comes first? This is what Salesforce referred to as order of processing in Salesforce. So it's something you should kind of like pay attention to, but it's something you should maybe read up and try to understand the order of processing. But from my understanding, I know that the order of processing is based on certain things. For instance, the system validation rules comes into place. That's the first thing Salesforce check. Salesforce check, okay, has this guy entered the right data? If yes, carry on. If no, stop. The next thing is custom validation rules. Obviously, we haven't done triggers because you probably wouldn't know what before trigger is. But if you're a developer, this is something you will probably get to work on, okay? Custom validation rules comes after. So the Salesforce does not check your validation rules first, okay? It checks whether you've entered the right dates. After that, it checks whether the start date is greater than the end dates, okay? So the first thing it checks is, have you entered the right dates? Then it goes to your custom validation. After that, it goes to your duplicate rules. Duplicate rules, like I explained earlier, it checks, is there a condition in place that would prevent me from creating United Oil and Gas Corp twice? If there's a condition in place, it's going to stop you. Okay? Then if duplicate rules is successful, it goes to assignment rule. So if you look at assignment rule is pretty much like the data is now in the system. So think about it from that point of view. Assignment rule, the data is now in the system. Now it's trying to assign who owns that data. You remember, if there is no owner of a data, it goes to the default owner, right? So it's trying to assign that ownership. After that, it goes to auto response rule. Then it goes to workflow rules. It goes to escalation. You know, you don't have to memorize this, but you need to just find an acronym for this, because this will come in your examination. If you're going to be writing certification, you need to know the order of processing. Okay? But I never remember all this. I just use my intuition to figure it out. But most of you might want to memorize this, cram this, or something like that. But you don't need to worry too much about it. As a developer, you would care about this, but as a Salesforce admin or consultant, you wouldn't be thrown on the spot to figure this out, okay? It's just for your examination if you want to pass it, or if you want to be very sure of order of processing, then you just want to memorize this, okay? So now that we know that, let's go to what I call data export services. Data export services is just another way you can get data out of the system. What do I mean by that? You know, previously, yesterday, we talked about creating a report to generate our account data. But this is mostly for those that need to back up their Salesforce org. Remember, Salesforce org is just data and configuration. The first thing you want to make sure is that you have configuration in place, your objects and everything. If you're doing the app builder, you will learn more about moving objects from one org to the other. But as an admin, you don't need to worry about moving objects. You want to worry about your data. So you have two options. You can either export all the data right now and save it. Then you can use one-click command to import the data back using data loader. So if you want to export the data right now, you just click on include all data, and all the data in your Salesforce gets exported. However, if you're just specific on a particular object, I want to just select few objects I'm interested in, then you select those objects.